Amazon released their financial earnings for the past quarter. Amazon stock, AMZN, shot up. It's softened up a little bit. I wanted to break down Amazon stock from a value investing perspective. From my take, first and foremost, I always look at the economy. We're probably going to see a fairly decent sized decline in the rate of growth of revenue for companies going forward. The stock market's probably going to shift. I'm looking at September, October, November. Things starting to get a little bit ugly. Amazon stock itself, I liked Amazon stock way below these prices at where it is now, but Amazon stock at this point is overpriced. Let's jump in. I'll break down the latest financials and show you what I'm looking at with regard to Amazon stock, but more importantly, the economy. I believe the economy is going to contract somewhat. The rate of growth is going to normalize, and the stock market will do exactly the same. Let's jump in. Here's a look at Amazon stock. You can see that there was a pretty decent little jump higher. Amazon stock, of course, is following the pattern of a lot of other stocks that are going on. We're seeing all-time highs get hit. The S&P 500 down, gold, copper, crypto is starting to pop back up. We see assets, generally speaking, hitting all-time highs. That should be a red flag, a warning sign to any savvy investor out there. The Federal Reserve is actively trying to restrict price increases. Inflation's been coming in too hot. Federal Reserve is going to leave interest rates higher for longer. Eventually, the market's going to get frustrated with that higher for longer mantra, despite the fact that it's just on the cusp of the Federal Reserve making moves. Given that, these overpriced stocks, and savvy investors are going to take profits quickly, and that could get ugly. But that would also be, if you're a value investor, a great opportunity to get back in, because what happens next is once the Federal Reserve looks at things and says, wow, and maybe we held interest rates up a little bit too high, too long, then they have to start making accommodations to the economy. So despite the fact that Amazon stock has shot up as much as it has, it's overpriced at this point considering what the company can earn given the current economy. But if consumers start contracting somewhat, this will push Amazon stock downward. Given that, of course, we're bumping up against all-time highs. Amazon stock, of course, just hit an all-time high, and now we seem to be in that area where we're moving sideways. The Federal Reserve back in 2022 was actively raising interest rates. We saw Amazon stock move all the way back down to about the 80 level, and I was screaming all day long, you need to buy this. I did not expect to see Amazon stock moving up as much as it did over the course of the period of time that it did. This is a bit much. We'll just look at that. Let's break down Amazon stock of assets at $530 billion. Cash and short-term securities, $85 billion. Liabilities, $314. Total equity, $216 billion. Shares outstanding, 10.4 billion. Trading at 181, giving the market cap of 1.89 trillion. Market cap, cash on hand, liabilities, giving an enterprise value of 2.19 trillion. Moving forward, price to earnings ratios, price to sales, price to cash flow, and price to book. You can see the numbers there, but let's show you what the charts look like. Here is price to earnings, price to sales, price to cash flow, and price to book. Trading at these numbers, it is, especially price to earnings at 50 times. The broader stock market only trades at about 30. And so this shows that Amazon stock is a bit on the rich side when you break things down from that perspective. Quarterly revenue, looking at Q1 2023 versus Q1 2024 for Amazon, pretty decent size move upward. This is one of the reasons why Amazon stock went as high as it did. We saw about 11% jump in quarterly revenue. Projected revenue, I had to move these numbers down, and I think this is really where the stall is happening with Amazon stock. I think I was printing about 641 for 2024 and about 718 for 2025. Analysts expect slower revenue growth. This initially, of course, didn't really necessarily affect Amazon stock, but eventually investors are going to look at this, savvy investors are going to look at this and say, you know what? The growth rate isn't there. I don't even know that they're going to hit the 2024 2025 revenue projections that I just moved downward. Again, the economy is likely to contract somewhat to a more moderate pace. That would mean that these overpriced stocks are probably going to be sold. Net margins are climbing considerably, especially on the for Q1. We're seeing 7.3% on net margins. Earnings per share only 98 cents, but this was a pretty decent sized jump from the previous quarter. You can see it was about a 68% change from the previous quarter. Earnings per share projected 416 for 2024. Now I have the next slide I'm going to show you. You'll see how I broke that down. 538 is a pretty decent jump for 2025. We'll see how that plays out. But again, I do not believe that these fast-paced companies are going to keep this pace up. And a savvy investor would sit there and say, listen, we're at all-time highs on just a copper just popped all-time high yet again yesterday. I didn't check it today. Gold, silver, equities, crypto popping back up again. The Federal Reserve is actively trying to contain price pressures. This isn't going to be a soft landing. It may be to a point where the Federal Reserve has to step in and say, you know what? We're not only not there yet, we might have to bump interest rates. We'll see at the pace of growth for inflation. We do get some numbers at the end of this week. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but it could be something where the market wakes up. We'll see. Moving forward, Amazon projection 478 the next 4 quarters, not for 2024 because we're already done with Q1. Given the price of 181, you're looking at a yield of 263. Your alternative investment is the U.S. 10-year Treasury yield at 4.45, 4.425. Eventually, the Federal Reserve is going to lower interest rates. When they do that, the relationship between price and interest rates flips. Anybody who's buying Treasury yields with a yield at 4.45%, if the Federal Reserve were to lower interest rates to say 3%, 3.25%, if you're sitting there holding on to Treasury yields at 4.45%, that's money because you're going to get lower yields in the future. A lot of investors are starting to push into this 10-year Treasury knowing full well that the Federal Reserve eventually is going to lower interest rates. That's upside potential on the price. Warren Buffett dumped 13% of his Apple holdings in favor of the U.S. 10-year Treasury. That should be sort of a wake-up call right there. Myself, I'm buying TLT stock. I've been buying TLT stock in a big way. I believe Amazon stock is way overpriced. I believe that the economy is going to contract somewhat and grow at a more moderate pace. And because of that, Amazon stock being overpriced, probably going to come downward. Your downside risk potential for the bond yields right now, it's very minimal. Risk to reward ratio right now at this point in our economy favors getting out of stocks, high-flying stocks like Amazon stocks, getting into what I'm doing, TLT stock, which is an ETF for long-dated Treasury yields. If you're looking for written content on this, I broke this down. My Substack link is down below as well. Make sure to hit like and follow if you're just finding my channel for the very first time. We'll see you in the next video.